My mother-in-law used a key I never gave her to unlock our front door and attempted to take my daughter. So I contacted family services and presented her with a legal document. She claimed, "I just want to see my granddaughter." Then she appeared with a news team. The footage went viral. The threats followed. And then child welfare officials knocked at my door. This isn't just a tale, it's a living nightmare. The intrusion of my mother-in-law into our home became a daily ritual. "I'm here to check how you're caring for my little girl," she would announce with that practiced smile. Even after I changed the locks, she showed up with another key. In desperation, I made one final move. And when she tried to enter the next time, she was met with a legal document that made her scream. I never imagined that marrying Thomas would also mean marrying his mother, Elaine. From the moment we said our vows, she seemed to believe she had an all-access pass to our lives and our home. It began subtly, a knock here, a visit there. But soon, it morphed into a daily occurrence. Every morning, without fail, Elaine would walk into our home unannounced. I'd be feeding our daughter with my hair untamed and still in my night clothes when I'd look up to see her standing in the doorway with that familiar smile. "I'm here to check how you're caring for my little girl," she would declare, her eyes scanning the room for any sign of disorder or neglect. I tried my hardest to be patient. She was family, after all, but her constant invasions began to wear me down. It wasn't just the lack of privacy. It was the underlying message that I wasn't adequate, that I couldn't care for my own family without her supervision. One morning, after a particularly sleepless night with the baby, I decided to address the issue. "Elaine," I began, trying to keep my voice steady, "I appreciate your concern, but I need some personal space. Could you please call before visiting?" She raised an eyebrow, clearly taken aback. "Darling, I'm just trying to help. Family doesn't need invitations." I sighed, realizing this conversation wasn't going anywhere productive. Discussing it with Thomas was equally frustrating. Caught between his mother and me, he seemed unwilling to take a stand. "She's just trying to stay involved," he would say. "Maybe she's lonely." "Lonely or not, I need boundaries," I replied. I decided to take matters into my own hands and change the locks. The desire to have some control over my own home drove me to such extreme measures. The next morning, as I was enjoying a brief moment of peace with my coffee, I heard the distinctive sound of a key turning in the lock. My heart sank. Elaine walked in holding a brand new key. "You changed the locks?" she asked, more amused than upset. "Yes, Elaine," I responded, frustration evident in my tone. "We need some privacy." She huffed as she made her way to the kitchen as if nothing had happened. "Well, that's not very hospitable," she remarked. I'd reached my breaking point. Changing the locks hadn't deterred her. She'd simply obtained a new key. I needed a more definitive solution. While researching my options, I learned that in our state, repeated unwanted entries could be considered trespassing, even by family members. Despite how severe it seemed, I couldn't continue living this way. After consulting with an attorney, I discovered I could petition for a protective order. After documenting Elaine's repeated intrusions and our attempts to set boundaries, I felt justified in taking this step, though it wasn't an easy decision. As expected, Elaine appeared the next morning. But this time, I was prepared. As I handed her the court order, I watched her expression transform from smugness to horror. "You can't be serious," she whispered, her hands beginning to shake. "I'm sorry, Elaine, but this has gone too far," I stated firmly. "We need our space." She let out a scream, a mixture of anger and disbelief, before storming out. Thomas was stunned. Eventually, after therapy, time, and countless conversations, he began to understand the impact his mother's behavior had on our marriage and his relationship with me. From that point, Elaine kept her distance. Our mornings became peaceful, and our home truly became ours. It was a hard-fought battle, but we'd finally secured sanctuary for our home. The court order brought a few weeks of relative calm. No unexpected visits, no critical comments about my cooking, no cold stares. Just silence. Thomas tried to maintain normalcy, but the tension was palpable. Though I knew he didn't blame me, I also knew he missed her. It's difficult to articulate the weight that accumulates when you're responsible for dividing a family. Then, one day, Thomas came home from work looking anxious rather than tired. He sat me down at the kitchen table. "She's hired an attorney," he whispered. I blinked. "What?" "She's contesting the court order. Claims it's unjust. Says you manipulated the judge. That you've lied about everything." I stared at him. While I wasn't surprised Elaine would stoop so low, hearing it aloud had a different impact. I documented everything, I said, trying to stay composed. Every visit, every time she walked in without knocking, every time I asked her to stop. He nodded. I know. I believe you. But she's not just fighting it. She's making it public. It turned out Elaine had been telling everyone, her friends, her relatives, members of her church, that I was unstable, controlling, and keeping her from her granddaughter out of spite. She'd also started posting on Facebook, vague enough to avoid legal challenges, but clear enough for anyone who knew us. It's heartbreaking when someone poisons your child against you. Some women marry to divide, not unite. I didn't respond. I didn't post. I didn't defend myself. I knew my response would only reinforce her narrative. But then she took it a step further. One day, I was home alone with the baby when I heard the doorbell ring. Thankfully, just the bell, not a key in the lock. Peering through the peephole, my stomach twisted. It was Elaine, accompanied by a news crew, holding a bouquet of flowers. I didn't open the door. She remained outside for 15 minutes, speaking loudly enough for the cameras to hear. I just want to see my granddaughter, she said in the sweetest voice she could muster. Is it a crime to love your family? Then she returned to her car and drove away. 2 days later, a video appeared online, featured on a YouTube channel focused on grandparents' rights. Grandmother barred from seeing grandchild, daughter-in-law goes too far. A portion of the video went viral. Comments exploded, with strangers weighing in. Some called me evil. Others said Elaine was insane. But everything was public. Our family was thrust into the spotlight, something we never wanted. Thomas tried to have the video removed, but once something's online, it spreads quickly. I started receiving direct messages, some threatening, others merely unpleasant. Then Child Protective Services showed up. Someone had filed a report, and I had a good idea who, claiming our daughter was being neglected. The caseworker was polite but thorough. She inspected the house, asked numerous questions, took notes and observed our daughter, who was clean, fed, and happy. She found nothing concerning. Still, it shook me to my core. I realized this wasn't just the behavior of an overbearing mother-in-law. Elaine was prepared to fight dirty. That evening, after the baby was asleep, I sat on the couch with Thomas and whispered, "If she wants war, I'll give her one." Thomas was silent at first, just looking at me. When he finally spoke, he said, "You're not alone." I began preparing for what was coming. First, I started keeping a log. Every call, every message, every suspicious car parked near our home. I wasn't paranoid. I was prepared. It took me time to share everything with Thomas. With work, the CPS visit, and his own guilt, he was already under tremendous stress. The conflict between loving his wife and honoring his mother was tearing him apart. I didn't want to add to his burden, but I needed to be ready because I sensed Elaine wasn't finished. I was right. A week later, I went to pick up my daughter from daycare, and her teacher, Ms. Lori, looked uncomfortable. "Hey, Rebecca," she said cautiously. "Can we talk for a moment?" My stomach tightened. Following her into the office, she pulled out a copy of the daycare pickup list. Elaine's name had been added. Someone had called and updated the emergency contact list, apparently over the phone. "Did you authorize this?" Lori asked. "No," I replied, my voice icy. "I didn't." She nodded slightly. "We thought it was odd. That's why we didn't release her." She had been there. Elaine had come to the daycare. She had tried to pick up my child. After thanking Lori, I took my daughter and drove straight to the police station. I was shaking the entire time, but I got through it. A report was filed. Our restraining order was amended to include the daycare. They said they would contact Elaine and issue another warning. She should have been frightened by that. She wasn't. 2 nights later, Thomas was out late with friends. I was home with the baby when the power suddenly went out. The entire house went dark. I froze. A storm? No. I looked out the window. My neighbor's porch lights were still on. Just us. I called Thomas. No answer. I called the electric company. No reported outages. Then I heard it. A soft knock at the back door. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I dialed 911. Though the police found no one when they arrived, they discovered wires that had been tampered with near our circuit breaker. That night, I installed cameras. Not fake ones, real ones. Complete coverage. The front door, the backyard, the side windows. 3 days later, we caught her on video. At 2:42 a.m., Elaine was on our property, approaching our daughter's bedroom window. just standing there, looking in. I took the footage to my attorney. We petitioned the court for a comprehensive restraining order. We already had one, but this elevated things to a new level. This wasn't interference. This was obsession. Thomas finally saw it all. Every bit of it. Beyond this point, there was no defending her. He cut off contact, blocked her calls, told her never to contact him again. Though we were shaken, we felt that perhaps, just maybe, this would be the end. It wasn't. A few days later, Thomas's car was broken into at work. Just the car seat, slashed and cut to pieces, with a note attached to the dashboard. You're letting her ruin everything. Nothing was stolen. No signature was needed. The following week, we moved. We kept our new address secret from everyone, including extended family. We upgraded our phones and changed our numbers. It felt like we were in witness protection, but we had no choice. We had a few days of relative peace. No knocks, no messages, no calls from Child Protective Services. Nothing. Until the letter arrived, no return address. Inside were copies of court documents. Elaine had filed for grandparents' rights. She was suing us for visitation. At that moment, I realized this wasn't just about control. This woman genuinely believed she had a legal right to our child. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. When I read the papers, I broke down crying. I won't lie. It wasn't just the shock of being sued. It was the cumulative effect of everything that had preceded it. The boundary violations, the threats, the smear campaign, the CPS visit, the daycare incident, the night she stood outside our daughter's bedroom window. Now she was asking a judge to force us to let her back into our lives and our child's life. I couldn't breathe. Thomas was furious. I'd never seen him like that before. He punched the wall in our kitchen. He hurled his phone across the room. But more than anything, he looked betrayed. Betrayed by the woman who had raised him. He blamed himself. He blamed himself for waiting so long to stand up for us, for hoping she would calm down, for choosing politeness when he should have made a clear decision from the beginning. Once again, we hired an attorney. This time, it wasn't just about protecting ourselves. It was about protecting our child. In court, Elaine sat dressed like a saint, light blue cardigan, pearl earrings. She even brought photos of herself holding our daughter and smiling, as if those brief moments were evidence that she was nothing more than a loving grandmother. In her testimony, she described me to the judge as unstable, possessive, and jealous. She portrayed herself as the victim, claimed she was concerned about her son's welfare, that she had to intervene. I sat there trembling with anger. Under the table, Thomas squeezed my hand. Then it was our turn. We presented everything: the logs, the texts, the daycare testimony, the police reports, the CPS investigation, and finally, the footage. Elaine at 2:42 a.m., standing outside our daughter's bedroom window in the dark. When that video started playing, the courtroom fell silent. Elaine tried to speak, to cry, to explain, but it was too late. There was no talking her way out of this. The judge leaned forward, expression stony. This is not a case of a loving grandmother being denied access. This is harassment, manipulation, and a dangerous disregard for boundaries. He denied her petition for grandparents' rights. Then he issued a permanent restraining order. She was prohibited from contacting us or our child in any form, for any reason, indefinitely. But that wasn't the end of it. As it turns out, filing a false report with Child Protective Services is a criminal offense. So is tampering with a circuit breaker, as is showing up at a daycare attempting to pick up a child for whom you don't have legal custody. 2 weeks later, she was arrested. Thomas received the first call, then the detective, then the news station started calling. Remember, her video had gone viral. The public was curious about what really happened, and suddenly those who had believed her saw the truth. She quickly became a pariah in her community. Her church turned its back on her. Then her friends stopped responding. The day she was taken in, Thomas was very quiet. He took no pleasure in it. There was no gloating. He just stared out the window for a long time. "She was my mother," he said. "But you were right." We sat in silence. I wish I could say I felt good about the outcome. Instead, I just felt exhausted, angry, hollow. I wish I'd trusted my instincts sooner. I regret letting politeness guide us through pain, but we made it through. Her attempt to control us cost her everything. For what? To prove a point? To win a battle? All she earned was a permanent seat on the outside. We moved again, this time across the country. A clean slate, a new city, just the three of us. No one enters our home uninvited. Not ever again.